Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host Simon Conboy. Apologies for the lateness of this episode. It was supposed to go up yesterday, but unfortunately was not able to get it done. So again, apologies for that. But thank you very much for checking it out now. If you've not seen one of these episodes before, it's one of my top 100 players of 2016 list breakdowns. So what I'll be doing is going through the 10 players revealed on Monday that the players revealed, and giving my assessment of their rankings, and then giving my own, offering up an assessment of why my selections are my selections. So we'll hop right on in, and on the players list, coming in at number 60, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Dez Bryant. Now Dez Bryant came in on my list at number 84. Don't feel like this is an egregious ranking. Certainly deserves to be on the list. You know, a true number one in every sense of the word. I personally struggled to put him too high on the list simply due to lack of opportunity last season. The Cowboys, of course, very much a run-based team. Didn't need to throw the ball a huge amount. Didn't. And also they were not a team that went deep often. Now, when they did, Dez was very successful at it. I think he was very efficient this season in terms of when he was targeted. But for that reason, I couldn't put him too high. I feel maybe this spot is a little high. I think there were some receivers who probably had better seasons last year. Not necessarily saying they're better players, but I think, unfortunately, production does stem from opportunity. And I tend to favour production. In spite of that, I do think this is one of the absolute top receivers in the NFL. When Dez is on his game, of course, he offers up every possible skill you could want in a number one receiver. Very physical, of course, much larger than your average NFL cornerback, able to high point the ball, has got great strong hands, is fantastic after the catch, has enough speed to be a deep threat. I still stand by my assessment of him and Mike Evans being the best fade route threats in the NFL, which is a significant skill to have in this league, the fade route being ever popular. So, no disrespect, Dez. I had him quite low. I think the players' ranking is somewhat reasonable. You knew he was going to be on the list. He absolutely does deserve it. As I say, I do believe he's a top 5 talent at the position. Can do it all. Expect him to have greater numbers, more opportunity next season as Dak Prescott continues to develop. Now, myself, at this spot, I had one of the key cogs on the Patriots defense, Devin McCourty, the safety. Got to give him a lot of credit. I thought he was bust early in his career. I don't think he was particularly good at corner. They moved him to safety. That's been a fantastic move. He's a very, very effective in that role for the Patriots. They use him pretty much as their free safety primarily, but he is moved about fair lots. It's a pretty multiple defence, of course. A very smart player, does not make a huge amount of mistakes. Certainly not the flashiest safety that you'll see on this list, but this is about consistency, communication. You can tell he's the leader of that secondary, which was once again very good and has been over the last couple of years. I do think he's been the most important player there. Tackles well, as I say, not the most supremely athletic, but plays good intelligence, fantastic zone corner, zone safety, can play, can move him down into the nickel if need be, which I think may well be the case this season with Logan Ryan gone. It'll be interesting to see if they do that. I think this was probably one of his better seasons in the NFL. Don't believe he turned up in the players list, but yeah, I think he's an unsung hero of that defence. I think they would be significantly worse off without him. So he comes in at 60. So good job from him last season. Coming in at number 59 on the players list was Josh Norman, the very highly paid Redskins corner. He did not make my list this year. I thought he was fine last year as a number one corner for the Skins. I don't think I put too many corners on this list, but myself. those that I did tended to be from the tandems, because I think they were the exceptional players last year. I think we saw with Norman what he is last year, and it confirmed some suspicions. He is a very, very good player, don't get me wrong. However, in terms of the absolute top tier of man corners in the league, I think we saw he's perhaps not on that level now. Was a little bit dinged up at points in this season, and of course does have to deal with some very good receivers in that division. It's only going to be tougher this year with the weapons that the Eagles added, the Giants getting more explosive in their passing game. Hopefully he can stay healthy and prove me wrong. I don't personally think he played well enough to justify a spot on this list. Certainly wasn't bad, as I say. I think he had a good season, but was it a great season? Was he one of the top 100 players in the league? I would not say so personally. Myself, at number 59, I had the ever underrated Tennessee Titans defensive lineman Jurrell Casey. What can you say? He has been a fantastic player in Tennessee for a very long time. Pretty much since his rookie season as a third-round draft pick. About as disruptive a lineman as you can get. Of course, playing in Tennessee doesn't help with your profile, and he's seems like quite a quiet player, but he's been an incredibly disruptive presence his entire time there. Last season, he had a fantastic season once again. Plays the run very well, gets an enormous amount of pressure for a guy of his stature. This is, again, one of them smaller bowling ball type defensive lineman. Plays with great power and leverage. Simply, that short stature really helps with getting underneath the pads of some of these guards and tackles. Now they're in a 3-4. Can really move about. A very athletic player. Doesn't look it, but he's surprisingly quick on his feet. And yeah, he absolutely deserves a spot on this list. Made it on the players list at a significantly lower spot, so I was glad to see them showing some love. I still believe this is the best player on that Titans defense. I think he has been for a while. If he played for a bigger team, he would be far more known. But yeah, this is a great player. No real weaknesses in his game. Elevates the guys around him, and I'm sure any lineman that goes up against him knows how good he is. So I think he's well deserving of a high spot on this list. Now, for the players list at number 58, this is something I was complaining about, and I knew it was going to be the case early in the list, when there were quite a few offensive linemen on the list that, simply put, offensive linemen do not get enough love in the players list. I think that is absolutely reflected by Zach Martin from the Cowboys coming in here at number 58. I think if you were to pick an interior lineman right now in the league to place on your franchise, this is probably the guy you would go with. He's been incredible ever since he was drafted. I think he could probably play tackle if a team wanted him to. He's a superior athlete at the position to anyone else in the league at this point in time. He's higher on my list. I don't actually believe him to be. I don't think he had the best season last season at guard. Was top three or four at the position, and that is reflected in this list. But this guy's just he's just, as I say, superior athlete. You can pull him out. He can get to guys on the edge that other guards simply wouldn't be able to. Can take on even some of the better linemen in the NFL, defensive linemen in the NFL, one-on-one, and win on a large number of occasions. Just does not give up pressure inside. Run blocks incredibly well. That unit plays like a well-oiled machine. Some of the lanes you saw him running, opening up last year, the lanes between him and Frederick were absolutely ridiculous and made Ezekiel Elliott's life far easier than I think any running back had it last year. It was higher on my list. I'll talk a bit more about him then. But yeah, fantastic player. And again, the offensive linemen, they're just not valued highly enough in this list. Now, for myself, coming in here at number 58, I suppose this is another area where me and the players differ. QBs. I've got a QB coming in here, one of the all-time greats, Drew Brees of the New Orleans Saints. Where this team would be without him, I dread to think. Over the last decade, and once again, what can you say about the guy? He just puts up absurd numbers, has made countless receivers into stars or, at worst, competent NFL players. Their passing game is going to rank near the top of the league as long as he's there. Him and Sean Payton have a great understanding together. He knows that system, can call plays at the line. Not as good at reading before the snap as anyone, getting his team into the right position. Very difficult to sack. I think that's always been a very underrated part of his game. First off, this team gets rid of the ball very, very quickly. Brees has a great release, knows what he's doing before the snap more often than not, so beats a lot of teams mentally as much as with his arm. I do think he's lost a little bit on his deep ball, but he makes up for that with his anticipation and understanding. As I said, great pocket movement, more elusive than you'd think, better athlete than he looks, which is something you do hear commentators say a lot, but it deserves to be said. It's a very valid point. Simply put, this guy's just dangerous on any given day, particularly in the Superdome. There's a chance you turn up and Drew Brees will beat you all by himself. Saw that plenty of times last year. A lot of games they've lost in the last 2 or 3 seasons where really he and the offense have done more than enough. I think turnover-wise, he has struggled a bit over the last few years, and I think part of that is from the pressure of just having to score as many points as they do. Certainly cannot afford to be too conservative with that defence. Sometimes, he does just have to try to make a play to get points, because punting is a disaster when the defence, especially the first half of last season. They did improve as the season went on, but they played that poorly. Still one of the most accurate guys in the game. I thought, saw the season before a little bit of a decline for a period where he was injured, and I was, as a Buccaneers fan, thinking finally maybe this is the beginning. Turns out it's not. Last year he was once again fantastic. Don't let the Saints record fool you. This guy is still an absolute machine. So, moving on, player number 57 on the players list. I'm gotta be honest, kind of surprised he was this high. Says a lot about the guy's profile at this point. Buccaneers QB Jameis Winston. Those of you who watched the first episode know he just cracked my list as player number 100. My reasoning was partly, and I was honest there, partly just fanboy for a little bit. Just wanted him on the list. But part of it was, much like Brees, I think Winston carried this offense last season. I don't think the offensive line is particularly good in Tampa, particularly when it comes to pass protection. I think whilst the weapons have improved, it's a young group. Mike Evans, of course, had a superb season. Cameron Brate played well. Adam Humphries showed some stuff as a slot receiver. But a lot of this did come down to Winston. Buccaneers had no run game, so he had to do a lot. And for the first half of the season, the defence was an abomination in a lot of those games. So Winston did have to do a heck of a lot. Played very well for the most part. Still a very streaky passer, which is the biggest concern. When he gets hot, he can look unstoppable. Will regularly make some wow throws, occasionally making plays that no coach would ever recommend attempting. I remember in particular there was a throw against Seattle where he was throwing on the move, throwing back across his body to Mike Evans, who was basically bracketed and got there because he's got a superior arm to most guys in the league. Of course, tougher to tackle than he looks. He's a big dude. He's pretty good in the pocket. Great arm. Maybe needs to take a few less chances, but I think with superior talent around him, that should come, and of course a bit more experience. I do think this is maybe a bit high for him, though. Of course, I had him down at 100. But it goes to show, I think to some degree players probably empathise with what I'm saying there, that he did a lot on his own, not necessarily on his own, but more than a lot of quarterbacks had to do, and leading that team to a 9-7 record last year was no small feat. Just want to see a bit more consistency in terms of accuracy and decision making from him next year. Myself, player number 57, another offensive lineman, David DeCastro, the guard for the Steelers. I think last year he's been solid for the Steelers since he was drafted. Maybe not lived up to the very high expectations I had for him coming out. I thought he was one of the best guards I'd seen at the college level in some time, and thought he'd be an instant star. Well, it happened last year. It finally got to that level where he was a Pro Bowl caliber player. Yeah, he was very good. Blocking for Le'Veon Bell is an interesting experience, I would imagine, for an offensive lineman. He certainly gives you opportunities to block a play open, slowly let it develop. He's one of the best run blockers in football at the moment. Much like Zach Martin, as a better athlete than most other guards, so you can have him pulling, blocking on screens. He can get to guys, and of course, guys on the second level, he's gonna get, if he gets his hands on them, it's done. One of the best tandems in the league last year. The interior for the Steelers last year was fantastic. It was a very, very good group, possibly a little underrated, if anything. I think DeCastro is the best player in the group. Doesn't give up much in pass pro. Fantastic run blocker. For my money, one of the top 3 run blockers in the NFL at this point, partly because of his range and versatility in terms of how you can use him, and also it's just his ability to just overpower guys at the line of scrimmage. As I say, he can get to guys on the second level and just take them out. Fantastic season, absolutely deserving of a place on the list. I don't know if he's going to make the players list. Disappointing. So there you have it. Now, player number 56 on the players list, Cliff Avril, the defensive end for the Seattle Seahawks. I think this is a bit high. He's not made my list personally. I have a lot of respect for Cliff Avril. I think he's a fantastic player, and he certainly warrants consideration most years for this list for myself. For me, I've mentioned this in some of my other videos, I don't think he plays the run well enough. I really value my edge defenders that can do both. I do think he's one of the top pass rushers in terms of just pure ability to generate pressure and pass rush. He probably is one of the top 10 guys. Didn't crack my list because I think Beasley was the only player that I considered a weakness in the run game to crack that list. I would put Averill in that bracket. He's a better run player than Beasley, but yeah, if you compare him to, say, Michael Bennett, who's on the same team, he's not even close to that kind of level. That's what holds him off my list, but I still think in terms of a speed edge rusher, this is as good a guy as there is in the league. He's been very consistent going back to his time with the Lions. Not one of the simpler cases of speed kills on the outside. He's got very good hand usage. Wins more often than not with his get off. When he does get to the QB, but more powerful than he looks. Has a good array of moves, and as I say, his hand skills are exceptional. However, a bit lightweight, not enormously disciplined, and for that reason, he didn't make my list. I think the players rated him a little high here, but yeah, it's nice to see a guy like this get the plaudits and make the list. But personally, I do not feel he should have made it. Myself, player number 56. This is one where me and the players were actually very close. Gerald McCoy, a player whose jersey I'm wearing at the moment. Last year wasn't his best season in Tampa. Still a fantastic season. This is still one of the premier players at the position. I still think, I don't know, it's between him and Aaron Donald for the best get-off as a free technique in the league. They're both players that can just win straight off the snap, even if they're planning on doubling. Just split the guard and the centre, or the guard and the tackle. As they did point out, I was glad to see them point this out in the video from the players list. Lined up wide a lot more this year. Previously, had used him to stunt a lot. This year, wasn't so much of that. It was more of a just get up the field and make plays, using him wide. And I think that really it showed something the Bucs should have been doing for years beforehand, because that get off on the outside shoulder of a guard, a lot of guys just simply could not deal with it. Just give them a little rip move and go by him, and there were times where it really was just that simple and he just blow by them. Plays the run very well. The only thing that can sometimes happen is he can get washed out and can hit holes too aggressively. I think you can, if you scheme around it, you can get some wins over him in the run game, but still a very effective player. As disruptive a defensive lineman as there is in the league. I think next year's certainly got the potential to be his best season, because he's going to have, I think, the best line around him that he's going to have ever played with Chris Baker there Noah Spence in his second year. Ayers is a rock solid player. And William Golson's a great run stuffer on the edge. So I think he's certainly got potential to climb higher on this list. I still think this is, maybe behind Aaron Donald, the most physically talented free technique in the league from a pass rush perspective, because that kind of get off is rare. Plays with great strength. This is kind of, if you're going to build a free technique from the ground up, this is almost what it looked like. Gerald McCoy, fantastic player. I think the players got him in the right kind of. I think he's close. So players will review him soon. Makes 56 on my list. I'd love to put him higher. Don't get me wrong, but that's where he falls for me. Great season. Well, a very good season. Maybe not great by his standards, but a very good season once again. So next up on the players list at number 55. Speaking of Gerald McCoy, the one player that he's always going to be linked to, the player drafted just ahead of him in the NFL draft from the Lions, now playing for the Miami Dolphins, Ndamukong Suh. Again, this is a player who was in a similar range to where I have him. He's not been revealed on my list yet. Suh, when he's on, is probably the most dangerous defensive lineman in the game outside of maybe JJ Watt. As good as Aaron Donald is, when Suh decides to be, he is just unstoppable. There's not a huge amount to a lot of his game. He's not the fanciest technician with the most moves, but his power game is absurd. He can just ball rush. I think probably any lineman in the league, one-on-one, he can just ball rush him when he feels like it and get in the quarterback's face. A lot quicker than a lot faster than he looks as well. And as we all know, when he looks to hit a guy, he hits a guy. Plays the run incredibly well when he can be bothered. It's my one concern. He does look like he can get frustrated in games and start maybe not quitting, but not playing as hard as you would like to see. When he's on, he's an absolute menace. I thought last year was one of his best seasons, actually, that he's had from an all-round perspective. I think he used to sell out a lot, which he was encouraged to do, probably, with Jim Schwartz's defense with the Lions. But last year was probably his best balanced season between run and the pass. Was incredibly disruptive all season long. I thought he played very, very well, and I think this is a reasonable spot for him. He's not being revealed on my list, but he will be soon enough. For myself, player number 55, real breakout season, I think. Finally starting to show some of the reasoning behind why he was picked first overall just a couple of seasons ago. Jadeveon Clowney of the Houston Texans. This is another one of those cases of my edge rushers on this list. A lot of the edge rushers on my list did not have great sack numbers. However, Clowney may be one of the best edge players in the league against the run at the moment. He plays the run with violence, aggression and discipline, which I always love to see in my edge players. Kind of remind me it's kind of standard run defense we've seen from Khalil Mack in his time in the league, and that's high praise, because Khalil Mack does it as well as anybody in terms of setting the edge on the way to the quarterback. Again, didn't generate a huge amount of sacks, but did get a lot of pressure. It needs to develop some more moves, I think, to finish off those plays. I think, of course, having JJ Watt back should help immensely in terms of freeing him up a little bit. But it was an incredibly disruptive presence last year. Him and Whitney Merciless were a fantastic pairing. Merciless is another one of those guys who just seems to have flown under the radar, but he's been a very successful first round pick for the Texans. Maybe took a while to develop him, but he's turned into a great player. And between the two of them, I think they were the real strength of that defence last year. They made the playoffs in spite of Brock Osweiler, so if credit lands anywhere, I think it lands with these two. Easily, certainly a player that could climb further up this list in future. He deserves a lot of credit. I thought he was fantastic. So there we go. Jadeveon Clowney, my player for number 55. Coming in at number 54 on the players list. This is one I'm pretty aggrieved by. Janoris Jenkins comes in here, certainly higher up on my list. I thought he was one of the top corners in the league last year. Great season. I thought he was very, very good for the Rams, but of course it was the Rams, so flew somewhat under the radar while he was with them. Major lack of success. If the Giants' success last season came down to a great defensive line and a great secondary for me. The offense was incredibly stop-start, hit and miss. Eli had a poor season. The offensive line was poor. Odell Beckham and Sterling Shepard can feel good about their seasons on offense. I'm not sure that anyone else can. But defensively, star secondary, just about all of them were stars. This guy's one of the guys that was, had true number one last year. Just a lockdown guy. Had him playing a lot of man, doing a lot of difficult jobs, and he did them very well. Played a lot harder than you saw him playing in St. Louis as well, which was good to see him putting it all together. He's always had the talent ever since he came out of college. Could have easily been a first round pick, but had some problems. But last year, he played with like he had a point to prove, and was, as I say, as good a man corner as there was. Is one of those guys perfectly suited for playing bump and run. I think every team should want a corner like this, because especially if you're playing one of those very big physical wideouts like your Julios, your Des Bryants, your Mike Evans. You want a guy like this that can actually match up with them and at least give you a chance on some of those jump ball plays. Played the ball very well. He's always had great ball skills, great ball location. I just thought he played a lot more disciplined, and as a result was one of the top corners in the league. I do think he's a bit low on the players list for me, but at least he made it. Myself, player 54, another defensive lineman. I do like my defensive linemen. There are a lot on this list. The Eagles, Fletcher Cox. I mean, what a player, especially early on when they were winning games, getting off to that fast start. He looked like he was going to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Always I'd say this is the kind of defensive lineman that doesn't have any real weaknesses in his game. Incredibly stout against the run, gets more than enough pressure as well. Again, this is a defensive lineman that will hit you. I love watching this guy play. They've got a good line there in Philly. Going to cause a lot of problems for some teams next year. Who knows what they were thinking when they were dangling him as trade bait. This guy, incredibly consistent. Very rarely has a bad game. You can move him about the line. I think you could put him at end. I think he's got that kind of get off and quickness that he could be effective there. Frankly, he can dominate a game, and again, this is one of them guys maybe not got the biggest array of moves, but doesn't necessarily need it. Can win with physical talent. Very hard to move in the run game. I think a lot of his game is built off that. Just gets up the field, fights his way through blocks, gets a lot of pressures, gets decent sack numbers. It's a do-it-all defensive tackle. Fantastic player. He cracks 54 on my list. So coming in at 53 on the players list is Amari Cooper of the Raiders. For me, this is a bit too high for Cooper. He's no doubt a fantastic talent. Loved him coming out of college, and he has lived up to that at this point. However, just a little inconsistent for me. And bear in mind, I watched him absolutely nuke the Buccaneers in the Ray J last season. I was there for that game, and he went absolutely bonkers. But really started to fade as the season went on. It felt like he was very quiet at the end of the year. There are games where it just didn't appear to do too much. I think that's possibly a lack of experience. Certain concepts, some teams maybe just game planning to slow him down and having it work. May need to just improve certain aspects of his game to adjust to that. The top guys in this league, they face bracket coverage a large proportion of the time. So that's just something I think he needs to get better at. Hands were a little more inconsistent last season than I would have liked to have seen in year two, but sometimes that happens. Saw it with Mike Evans, a perfect example in year 2, where he just not looking the ball in, looking to run with it. He is great after the catch, so that's a real asset of his. Just secure the ball first. One of the better young route runners in the league. As I say, I just think maybe needs to get a little more nuance to some of what he's doing in regards to when he's heavily covered. Not the biggest guy. Kind of reminds me a little bit of AJ Green. I think he should absolutely model his game after him. If he can get some of those disgusting, absolutely disgraceful double moves AJ Green, if he can incorporate that into his game, this guy's going to be terrifying. Again, this is the kind of player I can easily see climbing this list as him and Derek Carr continue to grow together, improve. It's good, a very good on paper Raiders offense, so he could certainly go absolutely bonkers next year and climb further up this list. Moving on to, I did have Cooper in my top 100, but he was significant. No, I think he was in the 80-90 range. Moving on, my list, player number 53, Seahawks enforcer Cam Chancellor. I do not think last year was the Seahawks secondary's best season. I thought the front seven kind of overshadowed them a little bit. Of course, some miscommunications at times. Cam missed some time. Earl Thomas missed some time. As a result, I think it affected the entire unit. Didn't look on the same page for chunks of the season, but still it's a very good unit. Chancellor, for my money, the premier sort of strong safety in the league at this point in time. I think it's very appropriate. I did a cover who last week on Adrian Wilson, because Cam Chancellor to me is just an improved, like a better version of the very, very good Adrian Wilson. We all know about this guy's hitting ability. I don't really need to delve into that. This guy will smack you. He's still a very good coverage player, not necessarily used deep too often, such is their scheme, but can match up with tight ends very well. If he's not hitting him, he's got incredible. He's a very big dude for the safety position. So he does a good job in zone. I don't think he's necessarily got the quickness to play super effective man, but they don't ask him to do it too often, so that's not a problem. Great blitzer, fantastic tackler, and of course a great leader. So really, it does he's the perfect fit for what the Seahawks want, and that role they've built around him I think is essential to what they do. Of course, they are a bit of a lightweight front seven. I think having a safety that can come down and also help out in that regard is a big deal, especially because I think they're quite soft at defensive tackle. Chancellor, fantastic player. He's been one of my favourites to watch over the last few years. He comes in at 53. Superb player. Coming in at number 52 on the players list, the player I just discussed earlier. Again, my current jersey's namesake, Gerald McCoy. I said one of the most disruptive and physically talented defensive linemen in the league. Possibly my favourite player. Yeah, my favourite player in the NFL at this moment in time. So, let's say, discussed him earlier at 56. Players had him at 52. Can't really complain about that. We're on the same wavelength there. Just 4 spots off. Yeah, he had a very good season. Not his best, but still a very good season. It's still a Pro Bowl caliber kind of season. Next year, I think he's got the potential to be a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. That would be great. So moving on with the players list. This is mine. My player number 52, Malcolm Butler, the corner for the Patriots. Somehow kind of flew under the radar how good he was this season. I'm not entirely sure why. I guess the Patriots defense was never looks that dominating. I don't think Butler's the most talented corner in the league. You can see, he gets help, but there's part of Belichick's genius is, we've got a very, very good corner here, but he's going up against some monsters. Let's try and help him out. Struggled with Julio in the Super Bowl, but then, that's fair enough. Who doesn't? This is a player I really respect as, smaller guy, but plays with great, great effort. Kind of reminds me of Rondé Barber. Because he's a very, very good tackler. Plays zone incredibly well. Great awareness, great ball skills. And, just really combative, battles on every play. I mean, just about every receiver he lines up against, it looks like a physical mismatch, but he competes. Clearly, this is a guy that, excels in the film room, translates it over to the field. I thought he was one of the better corners, as I said, in the league last year. Even though I do have to take some points away for the amount of help he got, it's really not lowered his positioning on my list too much. He's a top quality player. I feel bad for him that maybe they brought in Stephon Gilmore, and it does suggest to me that Butler's time there in New England may be short, which I think is disappointing, especially when, really, let's face it, over the last couple of years Butler's been the more consistent player. I thought last year was not the best from the former Bills corner Gilmore, but he'll be there in New England for another year. I think he'll once again play very well, and we'll see where he ends up next season. A very, very good player. Comes in at 52 on my list. So moving on to player number 51 on the players list, Andrew Luck. I've said this many times about Andrew Luck. This guy is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't care what the Colts records were the last couple of years. I know it's all about winning. He has carried this team, him and T.Y. Hilton have carried this offense in particular to legitimacy in the last couple of years. I think he's took an absolute shoeing over the last few seasons as Ryan Grigson struggled to build an offensive line around him. They tried to find him more weapons. Most of them didn't necessarily pan out. You can see he was playing hurt at times. What can you say? He's an absolutely fantastic player. I'm not sure if he's higher up on my list simply for the reinstate. I mean, he's got everything you want from a franchise QB, great leader, incredibly intelligent, takes a lot of chances, but again, I think this is more of like what I said with Drew Brees earlier. When you've got no confidence your defence is going to stop the opposing team, and if there's one defence that could challenge the Saints at times last year for worst defence in the NFL, it's the Colts. It's shocking the overall lack of talent on that unit. But Luck still manages to win games. This is a hell of a player. This is what franchise QB looks like. I'm a massive fan of his. It's higher up on my list, but I think not a bad area for him. Heck of a player. He's going to be a mainstay on the list, you'd think. Certainly be pushing for the one spot, I would think, if they can fix the team around him. Moving on, my list, player number 51. Really struggled with where to put this guy, but we got there in the end, and that player is Ramon Foster. Mentioned Steelers guard last week, earlier on in the episode, David DeCastro. His line mate may have been better, I think. On the balance of last season, I've got to go Foster. I think DeCastro's got higher upside and is going to surpass him, but I thought Foster probably played the superior season last year. As I said, this line was an absolute wall. Roethlisberger's not always had the best protection in the world over the course of his career, but they've really improved over the last few. As I say, the interior was fantastic. Did a great job opening up holes for Le'Veon Bell, who, as I said earlier, incredibly difficult to block for. You'd think you've certainly got to sustain those blocks and keep your wits about you as a lineman, because who knows where you may have to go if you get into the second level to help him out. He had an exceptional season. Plays with great leverage and strength. As I say, I don't think he's got necessarily range, so I think DeCastro is more important perhaps to the team in that they can pull him out on those sweeps and tosses, and for screens, Foster doesn't have that kind of mobility. No shame in that. I think DeCastro is one of the more mobile guards in the league, but I thought he had a truly, truly exceptional season. This is one of those players that just doesn't get enough credit because, an offensive lineman. Great player. Had to make my list, so there you go. Yes, that's where he comes in. So there you have it. That's my assessment this week. Once again, this season has probably been the least controversial for me in terms of what the players have done. We're starting to get to the point where some of the guys I already revealed are just coming up a bit too high. Some of the name guys, like I said, I thought, as much as I love Jameis, I thought Jameis was too high. Josh Norman, Cliff Averill, nothing egregious yet, but we're getting there. Amari Cooper, I think, was certainly too high based on last season. Zach Martin certainly too low. Those are the ones that jump out at me. But in terms of the D linemen, yeah, me and the players have been on very much on the same page this year with the defensive tackles, which is a surprise. So yeah, good to see them getting some love as always. Not enough O linemen. I mean, if we've got Zach Martin down here at 58, we're really going to be running out of O linemen. There's just not going to be that many more on the list, and yeah, I definitely think that's incorrect. I've probably got about triple the amount the rest of the list does. I think that's where a lot of my issues are going to come from in future. Of course, I'm expecting to see all the name players that I don't necessarily have on the list or high up turning up. There's certainly some that I've already revealed that haven't been revealed yet that gonna bug me, but we'll see how it goes. So there you have it. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure as always. If you've got anything you'd like to discuss with me personally, we've got the comment section below. I've got the Facebook page, Cover Zero. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. I'll do my best to get back in touch with each and everyone who does make contact. Always love talking ball, particularly with relation to simple stuff like these lists. Everyone's got an opinion on these sorts of things. So yeah, definitely let me know there. As always, if you can check out some more of the videos, it'd be greatly appreciated. If you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon, that'd be grand. As always, tune in next week for another episode in this series. Been a pleasure as always. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great evening and go Bucks.